Welcome to the Be Well at Usask podcast. My name's Peter Headley. Each week, members of the Usask and wider community will join me to share ideas and provide guidance on all aspects of being well, and we'll be highlighting initiatives and resources designed to engage and support you. In these challenging times, we hope the ideas and information we share will help. In this episode, I'm going to be talking to Garry Gable, who's an associate professor in the Department of Music. We're going to be talking about how the COVID-19 situation has affected the creative industries and those that work within them. We're also going to be discussing mental health and the healing and transformative power of music in our lives, both individually and as a shared experience. And as a special treat, we'll also be hearing Garry performing. Well, welcome to the podcast, Garry. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Peter. It's a pleasure to do this.
So can you start off telling me about your background and the work that you do at the university?
Oh, background. A long time ago, I decided I wanted to be a singer for a living. And that found its way to fruition after about, 10 years of university and lots of field training in the field of performing, both live and a little bit of TV and in different genres of music and actual straight theater. From opera to recital stage to concert stage, and then here at the university for heading on to 26 plus years, teaching all things vocal in the music department, including a music theater ensemble that I'm very proud of, that I work with my wife, who's music director, Kathy. And then teaching singing lessons and lyric diction and opera history and vocal literature and vocal pedagogy in terms of how to sing, teaching young singers how to teach singing. So that's my life in a nutshell.
So, well, maybe we can talk about, in slightly broader terms, about the creative industries, because things have changed radically in light of the COVID situation. Can you share some of your observations about what that change looks like and how it's affected the people that work within the creative industries?
Well, I can't speak entirely for the whole creative industry because it's such a broad area. I always try to separate visual artists from performative artists. And especially performative artists that require a live audience for the culmination of their work. But in the performing arts industry, theater, live concerts, recitals, symphony concerts, et cetera, the industry's been completely devastated by all of this. Artists are scrounging and scrambling to try and find ways to be relevant, even just for themselves, in the face of all of this. And I think most of us are trying to be patient and see it out. And some of us are trying to find ways to use technology in some effective way. And I know this is going to be certainly something that universities are going to be trying to do, universities and conservatories in music in particular, trying to figure out how to keep the performative element of their degrees vibrant and effective for students, assuming that they can even come to campus. And if they can't come to campus, how to do it in some fashion through the use of technology that can still be an important learning experience for them as they develop careers going forward past this COVID thing, which is certainly going to be something of history at some point. That's hard. It's hard.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I'm noticing, even for myself, one of the things that is helping me an awful lot, and I know it's true of the rest of the world, is things like music and movies and TV shows and that kind of content. And it's ironic, isn't it, that where we find ourselves right now, we're not really supporting those artists and those people working in those industries. At this time, they're amongst the most challenged by this situation.
Yeah, no, I think that's really true. And I'm a member of 2 or 3 different collective groups in performing arts, and all of them are scrambling, scrounging, negotiating with governments for different degrees of support, just to keep food on the table, kinds of things. You see them, and I mean, YouTube is full and Facebook too, I understand, although I'm not a Facebooker, but full of these experiences that artists are trying to create, if only for themselves, to keep their chops up. Because when a performing artist stops performing, they lose their chops, or they have to redevelop them. So you see them doing things online, trying to put something out there, or they get together with friends and say, let's just do something because we can't do anything else. And they're trying and experimenting with recording and putting something out. I once, just a few days ago, saw something come up through Facebook where a group of people got together in the Toronto area and across the country and put on a little mini concert of the finale of the second act of The Marriage of Figaro. They were all in different places, all in disparate places. They had one pianist, and whether they had a conductor or not wasn't entirely clear. But these 7 or 8 artists got together and sang this whole big intricate thing through the internet, and somehow solved the latency issues and things like that. But it's important kind of experimentation too, for those of us that are going to go forward and have to teach this stuff and give students something concrete going forward. So it's been really interesting to watch. Nobody's getting paid. It's not like the sports teams are going to play to empty fields and somehow charge for online attendance. I mean, I'll be curious to see if the Metropolitan Opera tries to figure that out in that fashion. I don't know. I don't know how they do it, but or how they might be able to pull it off. It's an interesting thing, and the sports teams do a lot through advertising and stuff. So I don't know, Peter. I think we just I don't want to sound despondent here. I'm actually pretty hopeful past the crisis. Getting through it is another issue, but past it, life will go on. We've had these kinds of things over history. Even in the last 100 years, we've seen 2 or 3 kinds of crises like this, and the world gets past it, and things come out the other side, and we move on, and actually move on in very effective ways. So,
yeah, it was interesting watching the VE Day celebrations in the UK over the weekend, and people are singing a piece of music from Vera Lynn. That is decades and decades old, but it's one of the most resonant things of that time that's still meaningful to people today. And it's interesting how something like music always plays that role.
Yeah, no, I think that's really true, and theater too, for that matter. Music is certainly an important element, and there's a reason why the ancients, such as they were, included the fine arts when they talk about university learning and higher levels of learning, and that notion that we balance as human beings when we are fulfilled in these 4 cogent areas. And music plays a significant role in soothing a savage beast. And stress is that savage beast in these times. So it's been interesting to see how people are turning to other ways of satisfying that part for themselves. Music certainly is one of them. I mean, I watch old movies a lot, and I've even lately been turning on some of these recorded, archived videos of operas, and I've had a little bit of fun watching our colleagues put things up online if they are so bold. You just want to stay hopeful. You want to stay positive. You want to look forward. That's what I'm trying to do, is look forward.
Well, and with that in mind, and your comments about people across the country coming together for a shared experience. So you and I first got to know one another about 4 years ago through an initiative called Mysterious Barricades, which we co-organized and co-hosted. Can you explain a little about, for the listeners' sake, what this is, and why it was so important for you to participate in the concert series?
Yeah. Well, Mysterious Barricades is this kind of really constructive, positive thing that came out of a tragedy. One of my colleagues, a dear friend in the opera world, lost her husband to suicide in 2015, and she, with a group of her friends and colleagues from across the country, mostly connected to universities, constructed at her, what would you call it, encouragement, this thing called Mysterious Barricades, which is a series of 1 hour or so concerts strung in a sequence from East Coast to West Coast in Canada over a 17 to 20 hour period, and done as essentially a continuous concert from coast to coast. Last year, it was 15 or 16 universities and communities across the country, including the Yukon, and involved literally hundreds of artists from across the country, contributing a 3-minute piece of music, whatever else, acts, puppet shows, people coming in and giving live interviews or recorded interviews of experiences that they had in their own lives to when they were dealing with suicide issues. And that's what Mysterious Barricades is really about, creating support and situational support, as well as emotional and societal support for suicide and suicide prevention.
And we should say this all took place on, I believe, September the 10th, World Suicide Prevention Day.
It cycles around the World Suicide Prevention Day, and it's supposed to go up this fall. I haven't heard anything since this whole crisis started, and I wouldn't be at all surprised that people are all scrambling to figure out how they can do it. And I'm anticipating hearing about it soon, because we were sort of looking at how we would do it ourselves here in some fashion. But the point is really that it was a way to reach out to the world with music, primarily to say to everyone that there are better choices, and there are people who care, and there are places you can turn to for support. There are all kinds of different ways by which a person can seek help and get that help, kind of thing. And I've been very proud of our involvement at the U of S in it. My colleagues have never let me down if we've asked for them to be involved. And the college and the university itself has been very generous in supporting us with the infrastructure and things like that to try and put it together. And we've put up together on from the national perspective, and it's not a competition at all, but from a national perspective, we put together very strong contributions every time we've been part of Mysterious Barricades.
And so we spent a lot of time on this podcast talking about the importance of mental health, and I think that's a given, and as commented, but in ways that it hasn't always been. And I know conversations you and I have had about mental health affecting performers in particular. But how has listening to and performing music actually affected your own health, mental health, and well-being?
Well, that's an interesting question. I deal with this a lot in my own psyche. Why do I have to do what I have to do? Why do I need to gain an audience? There are people who are like that. And I think performers tend to be like that. It's never been a surprise to me that artists of all kinds are some of the ones we learn about first that have sought psychiatric or social or psychological assistance in their lives. We deal with very powerful emotional selves within ourselves, and yet we've been taught from a very early age not to express ourselves. That creates quite an imbalance inside the head of a person who is quite naturally inclined to just say what they're thinking, express their feelings. And theater really creates a very positive place for that to take place, because it's not a random thought, it's a directed thought. And so there's great messaging in theater, and I think this is why theater works. And live performance works, because people are affected by the message, whether that's a musical message or a textual message, an oral message. A general audience is affected by it. The performer is affected by the opportunity to share constructively that which they feel within themselves and have people respond to it. It's a mutual satisfaction of sorts that live performing creates.
And do you think there's I've certainly always felt, I've been involved in performance of one kind or another. There's a sort of catharsis of sorts, actually. I know that there's opportunities when we share music, in good times and bad. Is that part of what's going on? And if so, how does this current context with really just individualized rather than shared experience change that?
Oh, I've thought about this a bit too. I concern myself for the degree of isolation people are suffering. And then I look around and you see these experiences, even just people going around, coming out on their balconies at 7 o'clock at night and banging their pots and pans in support of health workers. This is a community social experience, an expression of gratitude for people who are working. We're clapping our hands for them. We're beating our pots and pans for them. People like to say thanks. People like to be thankful as well. I think it is part of the human psyche. As a group, people like to congregate and share an experience of some kind, whether it's theater, whether it's a concert, whether it's a baseball game, whether it's a soccer game. They seem to have a need to congregate as a group. That's what church was and is for people. It's a way to go where there's a common thought and share that and come out with a healthier sense of yourself in the process. And I do think that that's something that music does. I've watched, my wife is a piano teacher and has little students as well as adult students whom she's been continuing to teach online. And one cute experience, the little kids next door who've been taking piano lessons with my wife, they were struggling with a couple of issues. And she had this neat idea of having them stand at one end of our sidewalk, and she stood at the other end of the sidewalk between the houses, and she taught them rhythm lessons with social distancing kind of thing, clapping their hands and tapping a desk or whatever kinds of stuff. And she was 20 feet away and taught them this whole lesson. It created a solution. People can get creative and solve things in really interesting ways with some of the technology that we have. So if we can just continue to stay open-minded about it, I think people can satisfy some of that. And I'm hoping that in some fashion, live performance can re-find a foothold throughout this crisis, so that people can not just have to go into archival recordings to find satisfaction, but can find a way to appreciate what live performers are doing at a high professional level.
That's such a great story about Kathy. I know when you and I spoke a couple of days ago, you told me that story, and I was rather hoping you'd share it today. So thanks for doing that.
Well, she'll be pleased, I'm sure.
Yeah. So I know that we're planning at the end of our podcast today to share a piece of music that you recorded at last year's Mysterious Barricades. I just wonder if you could tell us a little about, what is that piece of music, and a little about the piece of music.
This is the Handel, the Si Tra I Ceppi. It is a character in Handel's opera Berenice, who has been imprisoned because he won't marry the queen. And she puts him in chains, and then she won't allow him to see the woman that he actually loves, kinds of thing. But she sneaks into his prison area and tells him through the bars that she loves him and she'll wait for him and all this kind of thing, and knowing that he's going to be put to death, supposedly, the next day. And he sings this incredibly joyful piece of music that essentially says, these chains will not hold me back. I know that the one I love loves me and I love her, and death will not suppress me. The thought of death will not hold me back. I will endeavor and achieve.
Well, we can look forward to that. If people hang on, we can look forward to that at the end with you performing that. So one of the things that I'm asking all the guests to share is one thing that they're doing right now to be well, perhaps something that brings them joy or a sense of connection. What would that thing be for you, and how are you finding it helps?
Yard work has been interestingly cathartic, but I actually fixed a suitcase yesterday. One of those handles that won't go up and down. I took it apart and fixed it. So I actually now know the secret of that mechanism. That's something I've always been. My dad was a builder, and he taught me to be more curious about things. If they get broken, find a way to fix it. So I do things like that. I'm reading. I'm supposed to teach an opera history course in the fall, so I've been sourcing material for that. And that's been kind of interesting, and it's very bland and academic, but it's also something I'm really interested in. So I've been pursuing it. The other thing that I've really enjoyed as much as anything else, and that's, making an upside of a downside. My wife has lost probably 80% of her income because of this. So she's home more often, and we've been going for walks and sharing some of our bits of life together. Some in this particular couple of months where she's often been away for 6 weeks, we've been sharing together and finding out that we still love each other after 38 years. 38 years and still going strong. Yeah, it's that. And I mean, we're looking at music projects. I'm starting to look at what she and I can do, because we don't have to worry about social distancing kind of thing. Is there a way that we could start performing things together if we can find a way to develop it for an audience, even a live audience kind of thing, with concerts? I have this notion or wonder if all of a sudden the solo performer and the solo recital might all of a sudden become more viable than it has in recent years, simply because there's not as much entailed in dealing with issues of social distance, dealing with cleaning up after and all that kind of stuff, versus a theater experience where there's 70 people involved, kinds of things. I'm curious to see how some of this will fall out. But, you look around and you find things to smile about. We have a double flowering plum bush in the front of our house. We've been watching to see when they're going to bud. Mm-hmm. Little things, man.
Yeah.
Stop and smell the roses.
Well, one of the things that I was fascinated by when you and I spoke a couple of days ago was that you don't really listen to music.
Not as a rule. Like I said earlier, I prefer live. I prefer the live theatrical experience, being in the house, feeling the energy of an audience. I listen to things for sure, but it's work related more often than not. Mm-hmm. A student wants to learn a particular piece of music, so I'll get out a score and hammer my way through it, or I'll find a recording. If I don't have a score, I'll find a recording and listen to it. But I'm doing it out of a constructive purpose, not just an enjoyable one. And that doesn't mean that I don't. There's occasion for sure where I just need to hear Pavarotti sing something, kind of thing, because it fulfills me in some fashion. I'm still an audience. I still want to be thrilled. And, the thing Kathy and I had to pass up, we make trips to New York City once or twice a year, and we had to pass that up this spring, and we both have missed it, because we get so much satisfaction from going to the theater and the galleries and in New York City, the opera and the live theater and things like that. And we didn't get that this spring, so we've been finding other smaller ways of getting some of that satisfaction and that feedback. But yeah, I know a lot of artists that don't listen to music all the time for their own reasons. And I think it's largely because we're critical. And if you're sitting there in your living room, it's too easy to get critical. When you're sitting in the audience and listening to it and watching it, you tend to put the criticism to the side a little more easily, because the people around you are enjoying it more than you are, and maybe you should be enjoying it instead of being so critical. I don't know. That's an interesting thing. I've always been like that, though. But I love old movies. I really love old movies.
Well, I should say, I mean, and the reason I was surprised is just because what an important thing music is in my life. And even during my working day, I tend to listen to particularly film scores. So favorites like Ennio Morricone and John Williams and Thomas Newman, all of these amazing film scores, things that are fairly calm. I go for a little Hans Zimmer when I want things to be a bit more bombastic. When I'm cooking, occasionally Hans Zimmer's great. I feel like I'm performing cooking in front of 1,000 people, but yeah, it's such an important part for me to put on the headphones during the working day and find a place of calm and familiarity. Mm-hmm. It's almost a reset in a way, I find, in my own working day. So which I know is true for a lot of people.
Yeah, I don't think it's not true for me. I mean, as I said, they may be a little farther and fewer between sometimes, but occasionally I just need to be entertained. or I need a more intellectual experience with a great symphony, or even Kathy and I sat down and watched a production of Strauss's Capriccio the other night. Not something we do a lot. It's an opera, but both of us came away ultimately satisfied. It was a very good production. It was a very good set of performances, an ensemble cast, and we were quite excited about the whole experience. And we could talk out loud during the performance. That was even quite exciting by itself.
Yeah. So is there a final thought that you'd want to leave listeners with?
I think every musician has an underlying message. Every artist has an underlying message. Primarily a message of hope. Even those that produce dark works and things are only expressing fear, with the notion that somehow there's hope beyond that fear. And I think that's what music and theater and the creative arts are always trying to do for us as a society, is to offer the alternative to what we see sometimes as dark and unhopeful. Even zombie movies have a sunshine at the end kind of thing.
Well, I would agree. I think those kind of movies often allow us to step over the line from life into death, and in a safe space in a movie theater and again, I think a lot of the value of that is a shared experience of doing that. Mm-hmm. I think that's a fantastic thought. Well, I've always appreciated what we've been able to do together, Garry, and today is no different. So I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing your thoughts.
No problem, Peter. I'm glad to have been part of it. I'm so grateful that you gave me a thought for this, and I hope we help somebody.
Yeah, thanks so much, Garry.
Take care, Peter.
Thanks for listening to the Be Well at Usask podcast with me, Peter Headley, and thanks again to Garry for joining me and sharing. You can find more about Garry's work and Mysterious Barricades through the contact details and links in the down bar. Please check in again for further episodes and more content related to being well. Please subscribe and share this podcast. You can find us on multiple platforms, including YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. We'd also love to hear from you, so please post comments and questions, and we'll look to include them in future episodes. Also, if there's someone you'd like to see as a guest or a topic you'd like us to cover, or even just a reaction to an episode, please write to us at bewell.podcast@usask.ca. In the next episode, I'm going to be talking to Dr. Regan Mandrick, a professor in computer science at the University of Saskatchewan. We're going to be discussing the ways in which video games can contribute to social connection and positive mental health. So we'll leave you with Garry Gable and his wife Kathleen Lorenz Gable performing Citri Ceppi from the opera Berenice by Handel. Until next time, stay safe and be well.
stessa morte, il mio fuoco estinguerà. Sì, tra i cieli e le ritorni la mia fe risplenderà. La mia fe risplenderà, risplenderà. La mia fe tra le ritorte, sì, tra i cieli e le ritorte, la mia fe risplenderà.